How's it going, Red Wing fans? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, it's a little bit more of a fun, interactive type video. Earlier in my YouTube comments, I posted where I wanted you guys to leave your thoughts and things that you wanted me to react to. And most of you guys left some pretty good ones, so I'm going to react to them right now. Starting off with the first comment from TWWOP294 saying, I no longer think Steve Yzerman can lead us to the promised land within reasonable time. Remembering that 6 years have passed already, making the playoffs means nothing to me. Becoming a dominant team with mental toughness in this league is a worthy goal. What are your thoughts? Well, first off, I appreciate the comment. Now, although I do understand that the frustration of not making the playoffs and Steve Yzerman already being here for 6 years has been very upsetting. However, I do think that Steve Yzerman is putting us in the right direction, slowly but surely. Right now, he is not building a team that's going to make the playoffs, go in and lose in 4 or 5 games, just to say that we made the playoffs. What Steve Yzerman is trying to build is a team that is going to go into the playoffs and upset teams and move on to rounds. We're not going to go in and make the playoffs, say like the Ottawa Senators, for instance, who went in, made the playoffs, got the high of it, but then they instantly lost to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I wouldn't say instantly. They won a couple games. But still, I don't think that Steve Yzerman is really doing that. I don't think that he needs to be fired. I don't think that he needs to be moved on. Has he made some mistakes? Yeah, Justin Hall, not a good signing. Andrew Copp, JT Compher. But if you go back and you look at JT Compher and Andrew Copp, they're coming off pretty good seasons before coming to Detroit. They both came to Detroit, and I think the problem is we signed way too many guys from Michigan, and now they're at home and they're like, sweet, we're at home, we can party it up, we don't have to worry, we got our family, we got our friends, we don't got to pay money for them to come see us. Can you imagine Andrew Copp paying people money to go watch him play in Winnipeg when he played for the Winnipeg Jets? Or JT Compher having his family go out to Colorado? I'm sure they didn't get to see many games, and now they're there all the time. I'm sure the parties after the games, the get-togethers, probably takes an effect on your playing. Maybe not. But that's my opinion on this comment. I hope you guys appreciate it. Thank you again for leaving the comment. Now, on to the next one. Alright, this next comment could cause a little bit of controversy just based on the guy, but this comment from Play Disc Golf 1546 says, I think that Mike Babcock would have won another cup if he stayed. Alright, so my opinion on this is I don't think that Mike Babcock would have won a Stanley Cup if he stayed. I think regardless of who we had behind the bench, we still would have lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the rebuild still would have started. Everything would have happened. Unfortunately, the team was aging. Ken Holland chose to sacrifice the playoffs over rebuilding the team. He traded away our first-round draft picks for players to go into the playoffs to be better. That way, when we were drafting, we were getting nobodies, and when we were getting first-round picks, we were absolutely flopping on them. So I don't think that Mike Babcock would have had the roster to be able to contend for a Stanley Cup. Now, if you're talking about if he just went on to another team, if he didn't go to Toronto Maple Leafs per se, and he signed with a different team, maybe less media around him, he could have won a Stanley Cup. But by the looks of things, by when he did come back to the NHL with the Columbus Blue Jackets, his way of coaching is not how the NHL is anymore. The players are a lot different now. The coaches don't really have a say on what the players do. The players kind of do what they want. You can see it in the salary cap now with how players go about contracts. Before, you used to get paid for what you did. Now they're paying you for what you could do. Some players are getting $9 million contracts and they're getting nothing in seasons. But they got the $9 million contracts, and now these teams are like, what the heck? We got a player who's getting paid $9 million and they're on the 4th line. And I don't know who that is. My mind goes to Darnell Nurse. I honestly don't think that Darnell Nurse is worth $9 million. But, like I said, I don't think that Mike Babcock would have won a Stanley Cup. But I do appreciate the comment. And now let's get on to the next one. Alright, this third comment here is from CRS Forrester. Who replaces Steve Yzerman and why? So obviously this was going off if Steve Yzerman does get fired. Say he goes into this offseason, doesn't sign anybody, goes into the regular season. Detroit, again, doesn't make the playoffs. It's a bad season. He doesn't make any trades. So then I could see Steve Yzerman being let go and they go look elsewhere. Now, who would that be? Would they go and look into the organization, someone like Nicholas Lidstrom, who's been within the organization learning off Steve Yzerman for a few years now? Or do they look elsewhere? Say a team maybe like the Dallas Stars GM, who may also be losing his job depending on what they think. They haven't made it past where they want to be in the playoffs, losing again in the third round to the Edmonton Oilers. Then there's also the idea of looking into the CHL, kind of like the Toronto Maple Leafs did with Kyle Dubas back in a few years ago. Or do they look into the free agent list of GMs that have NHL experience? That I'm not too sure of. It's a list that doesn't seem too appealing as of right now, but that could change come the time that Steve Yzerman gets fired. However, I don't think that he will. Personally, I know I just said that at the beginning of the video, but I think that this season will be huge, and I think that he knows the pressure is on him now. He's been always talking about patience, but I think even he knows now that the patience is running absolutely so thin that you could tell that press conference that he had at the end of the season was pretty intimate when it came to questions and his responses. He was pretty pissed off if I'm not gonna lie, he looked pretty pissed off. But again, I don't think he will be fired, but if he does get fired, this is something that we'll have to talk about when that time comes. Again, I appreciate the comment. Now, let's get into the fourth and final comment. Okay, so for the fourth and final comment, we got a big trade idea here. Something I love to get into, so let's get into it with Brent's comment. What do you think of Detroit packaging our second round pick in 2/3? Do you think that moves us up to 28th? Might be able to get a guy with upside like Rabkin or Reshesny. Seen some mocks that have him around 25. I would draft a player like Carter Bear at 13th and possibly Reshesny, Nisbet, or Kindle, and a hypothetical would be a good draft here. A few teams have multiple first rounders this year already. Maybe putting a guy like Rasmussen and a prospect with some combo of picks might get a bite on that. I think we're in the quality versus quantity phase of our prospect acquisition now. I would also be trying to be on Isaac Howard as well. Alright, first off, I appreciate the comment. So, do I think that they could package some picks and that to move into the first round? Although it does seem like a reasonable trade and idea, it's very rare that teams are doing that anymore. A lot of teams love to hold on to their first round picks, regardless of if it's early on in the draft or if it's late in the draft. However, any trade, if you send the right players over, could get the job done. Do I think Michael Rasmussen is somebody that could get a big trade for? I don't believe so. He's never really panned out from being anybody other than a third line player. They've tried to move him up. They've tried to give him opportunity. He uses his big body as somebody who is not a big body. It's always been a hateful thing people say on him. He's supposed to be this big guy, but he doesn't really use it. Minus that time that he messed up Jack Hughes. It was a good time. But other than that, he has not really lived up to. I don't see a team giving up a first round pick for a player like Michael Rasmussen. But you throw in prospects. Which prospects would they be asking for? Would they be asking for guys like Carter Mazur, Amadeus Lombardi, players like that? I don't think it's worth giving up. But now, as for the final part about Isaac Howard, that's interesting to me because Steve Yzerman obviously has ties with Tampa Bay, being their general manager before. So would he want to go out and acquire a trade with them? Would Tampa Bay be willing to trade Isaac Howard to somebody that they would eventually have to play multiple times in a season? I'm not too sure about that. What would a trade look like? Would the Tampa Bay Lightning be looking for guys like Axel Sandin Pellikka, Michael Branzik-Nygaard, even a player like Marco Kasper? I know it sounds silly, Marco Kasper coming off 19-goal season. He's untouchable. There's no way that's an overpayment for Detroit. But Tampa Bay's looking at a player who just came off a Hobie Baker winning season with Michigan State, so they're obviously high on him. So they're not just going to trade him for, a third-round pick and a bunch of no-name prospects. They're going to want somebody that's going to come in that will fill the role that Isaac Howard filled. Does Detroit have anybody in their pool that would be high enough to trade? I don't think so. I think you'd have to package 13th overall along with a high-end prospect to even have them consider it. I think there's other teams in the NHL that are going to be willing to throw out more than what Detroit would throw out, but that is not me saying I do not want this player. If Detroit went out, traded for him, as long as it didn't come down to like Axel Sandin Pellikka or anything like that, because I have really high hopes on Sandin Pellikka, and I don't think he should be traded at all. But I do think that if there's a possibility that Isaac Howard can come to Detroit for a reasonable price, that we do it. I appreciate this long comment, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video of this little more fan-made stuff. If you enjoy it, let me know by leaving a like and comment down below what you would like to see in future videos. I hope everybody has a great day, and as always, let's go Red Wings.